this evening, I'd like to introduce Stuart. He's a Roanoke native, ex-Marine. He resides here in Roanoke. He's in the IT field, and he has some ideas about changing our government. And so, without further ado, Stuart.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I want to thank you for affording me the opportunity to come speak to you today. And I want to talk to you a little bit about the status quo. But first, let me introduce myself. My name is Stuart Bain. I am the Libertarian Party candidate for this year's United States House of Representatives election for Virginia's 6th Congressional District. My personal history, as he said, I was born and raised in Roanoke. In fact, the first 18 years of my life, I lived about a mile from here, right over the hill over here in Green Valley. I graduated Cave Spring High School, went straight to the Marine Corps, served a little over 5 years, did at Virginia Tech, studied computer science and management science, and then I went to ASU to study business. Now serve as the Chief Technical Officer for a Roanoke-based web development firm, and we do design and marketing mostly for auctioneers, but we also do other companies as well. Been there since 2002. Now live in Salem, love my wife, and Sarah, and our daughter is 8 years old, and son's 4 years old. Like I said, I am running for Congress. This is my first foray into politics. As far as political experience, then that means I guess I really don't have much, unless you count being a sergeant in the Marine Corps, which is probably about as political as you can get sometimes. I'm not a career politician, though. And that's probably what differentiates me a lot from others. And I'm not a lawyer. Some people tell me I'm not even a politician at all, which is, I mostly agree with. I don't have a law degree, don't want a law degree. No offense to anyone that does have a law degree or is a lawyer, but I think we have enough lawyers in Washington, D.C. A lot of people seem to agree with me on that. I consider myself what our forefathers mostly intended to be as far as elected officials are concerned. And that is otherwise reluctant members of the community willing to temporarily set aside their vocation and serve as a representative of the people. It's also called the concept of citizen legislators. I publicly announced that I was going to run for the United States House seat in March 2009. And I did have a small number of diehard followers and press, a little bit of press right from the get-go, but other than that, my announcement went pretty much unnoticed. That wasn't until January 1st of this year, when I said, okay, well, today is the first day I'm legally able to go get signatures to put my name on the ballot. And everybody would kind of went, wait, you were actually serious about that whole running for Congress thing? I said, well, yeah, of course I was. I hit the streets, started collecting signatures, and out of the 1,500 signatures that my campaign submitted to the State Board of Elections, I personally collected about 1,000 of those. This provided me, I guess you could say, provided me an opportunity to meet the voters. And it wasn't easy. I mean, I had to answer a lot of questions. Some of the best ones actually come from groups like this and similar groups like the Tea Party, because you guys actually take it upon yourselves to make sure you're educated as to what's going on in the country. One of the most common questions I was asked, especially by the media, was, why are you running for office? Or, to put it another way, what prompted you to run for office? I've been answering that question for over a year now, and I've been trying to refine it, been trying to make sure they understand the response. Mostly it's economic reasons, but when it really boils down to it, I guess another answer you could say is that when I was 17 years old, I took an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States. That oath still stands to this day, and the more I reflect on it, the more I realize that there's another term that can kind of sum up why I decided to run, and that is the status quo. So let's talk about the status quo. Ronald Reagan once said, status quo, you know, is Latin for the mess we're in. Very forward-looking and prophetic of him at the time. I mean, if you sit back and you look at what maintaining the the status quo has done to this country. I mean, think about it. Over the course of the past century, we've sat and we've watched this ping-pong politic game. And it's just been going back and forth, liberal to conservative, Democrat to Republican, Democrat to Republican. It's just nonstop. It goes on and on and on, both of them growing the government either to the right or the left, to the right or the left. It's nonstop. And they're growing the government out of control in their respective directions. And in turn, what have we seen? We've seen our country, we've seen our Constitution, we've seen our liberties. They've been degraded, they've been trampled on, they've been stepped on, stepped over, even outright publicly usurped, right from under our noses. And it's happening on an ever-increasing scale every single day. I mean, you know, just like he was saying just earlier, another bailout package, yay! You know, it's nonstop. So here's the thing, though. A lot of people look at it and say, oh, well, it's their fault, or it's their fault, or it's this guy's fault, or it's that guy's fault. Look, it's not a right versus left problem, okay? It's not a Republican versus Democrat problem. It's not even a liberal or conservative problem. It's a systemic problem throughout the entire government. And I know I'm kind of preaching to the choir here, but, you know, stay with me on this. You know, the problem exists at all levels of government, more especially at the federal level. But when you look at it, you know, both of the biggest parties, they want to grow. You know, they want to grow the government in their direction, left or right, which is okay. That's what they want to do. I disagree. I've had enough of both the left and right out of government growth. And I think it's time that we put our foot down. And it's time for us to say, you know what? We've had enough of the status quo. It's not getting us anywhere. And we've had enough of the left versus the right. We've had enough of the R versus the D, of the liberal versus the king. You know, the ping-pong game just needs to stop. Okay, so now, I know I've probably stepped on some toes by now, so let's do a show of hands real quick. Just raise your hand if you would describe yourselves as a conservative. Anyone? Okay. How about a liberal? Any liberals in here? Okay. How about a Democrat? Do we have any Democrats? Okay. Do we have any? Everybody's done it. Finish that. Any Republicans? Boo. Okay. Any libertarians? Libertarian. Okay. Do we have any constitutionalists? Yeah. There we go. Okay. How about any statists? No. Communists? No. Okay. Hey, you never know. You never know. Any Marxists? No. Socialists? No. Anyone? Okay. All right. Well, how about do we have any anarchists? Those are always my favorite. Anyone? Anarchy. There you go. Okay. Come on. Any fascists? Anyone? No? How about capitalists? Do we have any capitalists? Anarcho-capitalists? Anyone? Okay. All right, so as you can see, obviously, you know, we have some healthy, different opinions here just amongst our group. And I applaud you all. I mean, you actually took the time to know and understand what some of those terms mean. Now, unfortunately, like I said, I got 1,000 of those signatures myself. And I got a little glimpse, a little window into the thinking of a lot of your fellow citizens. And I can tell you this, I've spoken to a broad spectrum of voters from across the 6th District, and a lot of times, because you know, we would get like gun shifts and things like that, we would talk to people even outside of the 6th District, sometimes from out of the state. And I found 3 things I want to share with you. And number 1 is this. Most people, they don't care. They just don't care. Okay? And what I mean by this, and you all know this is kind of common sense, but you know, let me elaborate a little. They're apathetic. Now, they're not pathetic. They're apathetic. Apathy. Okay? All right? And when I say they're apathetic, I mean they're apathetic when it comes to matters concerning the government, concerning politics. Let me give you an example. I was walking in a neighborhood, okay? And I was getting signatures, and I saw this couple walking down the road with a dog. So I walk up to them. It's right over by Patrick Henry High School, where my wife grew up. And I say, hi, my name is Stuart Bain. I'm a candidate for Congress running in your district, and I would like your support I need your help. If you could sign this petition to help me get my name on the ballot, I greatly appreciate it. You know, pretty standard fare, right? And the lady said, well, you know, I'm sorry, but I just don't know you, so I'm not going to sign it. I was like, wait a minute, who's your representative now? And her eyes just glassed. Well, I don't know. Oh, okay, well, now you know me better than you know that person. Are you sure you don't want to sign this? Here's the scary thing, though. I did it that way. She was not the only person I had to use that line with. There were other people that said that same thing. You would be amazed at the number of people, not just here, but everywhere, that have no idea who's representing them or how they're voting at any level of government, much less the federal level. And they only come out of their political shells once every 4 years for that presidential election. But I tell you what, they can tell you what the spread of the Hokies football game is, or they can tell you who performed best on American Idol last night, or, you know, America's Got Talent, or whatever. So, you know, when you take a look at that broad spectrum of different levels of education, I gotta say, God bless you guys for actually making a difference, coming out, taking an interest, educating yourselves. Now, and here's why. That apathy sustains the status quo. Okay? So, we need to get rid of that, and we need to somehow educate and involve those people. Now, that leads me to point number 2. After I get Now, when it comes to education, some of the ones who do care, they don't have all the facts. That's point number 2. Some of the ones that do care don't have all the facts. In other words, they're operating without all the information that they need to actually make an informed decision. And the number one question, this has got to be the best question. When I was asking for signatures, I would go up to someone and I'd say, hey, Stuart, we're in Congress, sign my petition, please. Number one question. Can anyone guess what it is?
Who are you? What party?
What party?
Now, that's not how they word it, though. What do they say?
Democrat.
They say, are you a Republican or are you a Democrat? Now, think about that for a second. Now, usually this came from people who consider themselves somewhat politically savvy, which is good. But think carefully about those words. A Republican or a Democrat. Now, from most people's point of view, that's all they've ever known. That's all they've ever heard about. The media, the major parties, they've instilled in these people what students of logic would call a false alternative fallacy, or a false dichotomy, okay? And when, I do computer programming, so my first initial thing is, Republican or Democrat? No. But I didn't do that. Usually I would say neither. I wanted to say, well, I'm neither. Now, some people, they would say, oh, well, good, I can't stand neither one of them, and they'd sign the petition. But some of them would press it further, and they'd say, oh, so you're an independent? I said, no, I'm not an independent either. And so they would say, well, wait a minute, what are you? And I say, okay, well, I'm the Libertarian Party candidate. And it just that like that lady with the dog, the eyes just kind of gloss over, lost in space. Wait a minute, what's that? And, some people would say, oh, heck yeah, and they'd sign a petition. Some people say, well, what's that? And I'd explain it to them, we oppose the initiation of force to achieve political, social goals, et cetera, et cetera. And then they still don't get it. Someone would say, okay, so a libertarian, is that a Republican or a Democrat? I mean, they have it ingrained in their head. They're afraid of voting or thinking outside that box. And they're fearful of wasting their vote. So let me ask you something, all of you. Can you honestly say that if your vote was out there, that it would stay the exact same regardless of whether or not there were any such thing as a political party? Think about that. I mean, some of you can. I can. Now, in my opinion, that's the only way to keep from wasting your vote. Because, I mean, personally, I refuse to succumb to that fear that's instilled in people about wasting their votes, about that false dichotomy. I reject that, okay, when people present that to me. But it's not good enough for me to reject it. I have to educate others and tell them, look, it's real simple. Either you stand on principle or you stand aside, okay? And let the real leaders through. So that leads to my third and final point, because that takes a lot of guts to set that fear aside. But the third point is this. Over the years, all the power mongers in our country, the mainstream media, the Republican Democrat parties, to some extent, even the smaller parties, such as the Libertarian Party, the Constitution Party, etc., they've instilled in the American voters this sense of fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Okay? It's also known as FUD. Now, some of you may have heard of FUD before. FUD isn't anything new. FUD is actually an old IBM term, for those of you not familiar with it. And it was what they taught their sales force to use. And how many of you ever heard the nobody ever got fired for buying IBM? Remember that? That's what their sales force used to get that through to their customers. That fear, that uncertainty. That, oh my gosh, what if you buy another company's product and it's not IBM? Oh no. Well, guess what? Every day we're subjected to that. Not from IBM, but from every direction. So, in my personal experience, it was evident that voters, some of them just really didn't want to support me at all. And it wasn't because they didn't agree with me. It was because they didn't want to risk splitting the vote. How many of you heard that before? Oh, I vote for you, but I don't want to split the conservative vote. Anyone ever heard that? Yeah.
Every day.
Yeah, I hear it all the time. I heard it all the time. So, I'd ask for a signature. They find out I wasn't the Republican or the Democrat or whatever. And they say, well, I don't want to split the vote because I don't want the other guy to get elected. It's like, well, guess what, folks? There's no Democrat in this race. Short circuit. That doesn't compute. You know, as far as the major party candidates are concerned, there's only two. There's a Republican and there's me, the Libertarian. So there's no way to split the vote. None whatsoever. Some of the voters, I would tell them that, and they still were set in their ways. They were insistent that they were somehow going to miraculously vote for this Democrat that didn't exist. I'd like to see that one happen. Right? Yeah, go ahead and write it in. I mean, they're hell-bent on maintaining that status quo. So much so that they're denying facts. Imagine that. That's how much the status quo means to them. So the only way to vote, in this day is to say, hey, look, there's no Democrat, but I need you to consider voting outside of that R&D mentality, outside of that status quo mindset. Some of them get it, some of them don't. It's almost like they're just not wired. People aren't wired to think that way. And I tell them, hey, look, you don't get to choose between a liberal and a conservative this year. Okay, you're either going to get liberty or tyranny. I'm the liberty guy. The other guy's the tyranny guy. It's that simple. So that's the only choice you get to make. And people just, they didn't want to recognize that. One lady even said, I told her that, and she said, no, thank you. I was like, wait a minute. No, thank you? What's not to like about liberty? And she said, you know what her response was? She said something like, oh, well, I love liberty, but just not that kind of liberty. What? And, I thought the pledge said something like, justice and liberty for all. Do people just not mean it when they say that? That didn't make sense to me. But I do know one thing. We've got these failing education systems in our country. They're indoctrinating our children. They're not educated, trust me. They're indoctrinating them, okay? The mainstream media, the political culture, they're taught one thing. When they come out of that system, they know that the main thing is to keep the main thing, and maintain that status quo. Keep it going. And they're also told this, oh, don't worry about it. Others have that under control. You need not concern yourself. Please enjoy your sports center or the latest Cops rerun or whatever it is that you enjoy. We'll take care of it for you. Well, fellow patriots, I got to tell you, this can't go on forever. And it won't. Because it's up to us, you and I, every single one of us, and others like us, We have to lead the way. We have to make people understand that big government and global government mentalities on both sides of the aisle are wrecking this country. Hands down. We must destroy that status quo line of thinking. We have to make people understand that you don't have to choose between tyranny on the left, tyranny on the right, or whatever. That you have an alternative. It's liberty or tyranny. There is a viable option. And that is to vote for constitutionally limited, liberty-minded government. Period. I was recently quoted in the paper. I said that this election is going to be a referendum on the status quo. That because the voters don't have to choose between a big government Democrat or a big government Republican. They get to choose between a conservative, small, constitutionally limited government libertarian, which is me, or they can choose a moderate Republican with a somewhat spotty voting record. Oh, speaking of which, y'all love it. How many of you here are involved with Americans for Prosperity? Anyone? Okay, you're going to love this. Has anyone ever seen those yellow or green and yellow Americans for Prosperity bumper stickers that say socialism isn't cool or something like that? I saw one of those on a bumper sitting right next to a Bob Goodlatte sticker. And I'm like, wait a minute. Bob voted for socialism in 2003. That doesn't make sense. I even took a picture of it because of the irony. How does someone who hates socialism support someone who voted for socialism? I don't get it. Anyhow, in closing, I encourage all of you, stay the course, fight that status quo line of thinking. If you're here, you're already taking a step in the right direction. You're in good hands. You have an excellent start over everyone else. Educate yourselves, educate others, find your voice, get out there, and make it known that the Constitution isn't just, what you call it, a damn piece of paper or something like that? It's not just a piece of paper, okay? The Constitution's principles are timeless. And our country is worth investing the time and the effort. I mean, look at me. I'm not a politician. I'm a geek. I work on computers all day. Here I am running for Congress to fight for this stuff. It is worth the time and the effort to get out there and make sure that constitutional principles are upheld. You know, Virginia has a ton of firsts in this country when it comes to politics. You know, first president, you know, the framers of independence, the Declaration of Independence, Constitution, all that. Virginia. We lead the way. And now, you have an opportunity to be a part of another first. Take this status quo and shrug it off. Throw it aside. Help me break new ground and make history by being the first ever LP candidate elected to the level office. Imagine that. You have absolutely nothing to lose by switching your vote to someone like me. Vote on principle, not on party. Okay? And I thank you in advance for doing so, because here's the thing. I need your support, and people like me need your support. Not just here, but everywhere. We need your support, your endorsements, your contributions, your input, your insight, your knowledge, your experience. If we're going to make these historic opportunities realities, we've got to have that network of support. And if you're involved with other groups, tell them I need their support too, and their endorsements, especially the Tea Party. You know, the Roanoke Tea Party, I think they even said, you know, they're going to focus on the state and local level. That's great. But guess what? It doesn't work that way in politics. You cannot just shoot an arrow at one thing because everything's tied together. You have to take a holistic approach at everything you do. Okay? Because everything touches everything else. So tell those groups to support candidates that stand for what you believe in, what they believe in, even if it pains them to do so. So anyhow, I again thank you for your opportunity. Thank you for giving me the time to speak.